Hey everyone, it's me again, Tara Manisic, TZ Manix on Twitter, and I am here as a developer advocate for progress on our Kendo UI library built from the ground up for React. And this is a video series where we're running through how to create a robust application using React and Kendo UI. And this is video 4. All the videos are listed below for you to follow along. And we also have the repo with all the code in there as well. So if you have any questions, remember that you can find us at Kendo UI on Twitter. So where are we? Besides here, right now, watching this video. In the last video, we created the React application to have the components that we installed in video 2. And so in the last video, video 3, we brought those components into our project. And now in this video, we are going to be customizing them to be more of what we need them to be. And we are working with the Numeric Text Box, with DropDownList, with buttons, and with the all-famous grid. The first thing that we're going to look into is the Numeric Text Box, because we do have the DropDownList first, but we just added the data and we were done. That's all we needed. We were like, listen, DropDownList, that's all we need from you, thanks. More importantly, our Numeric Text Box is not working exactly how we want it. Right out of the box in Kendo UI, let's look at the documentation. Right out of the box, it was basically adding any numbers that the user wanted to put in. And see how we have that UX with the highlighting of the default theme right out of the box? Pretty nice. But we also don't want, as many times as I want to, only halfway do some of the healthy things that I want to do, we don't want that to be part of our list options because people are going to be making iterations as radio buttons that they can tick off. We also don't want people to eat negative amounts of fruit and veggies. I don't even know what that would be, and I don't want to know what that would be. So, in order to do that, we basically can go into our Numeric Text Box, and we're in our app.js file still. Go down to line 35 where our Numeric Text Box is and start adding some properties. The first property that we're going to add is the format, because we don't want there to be any decimals. So we just set this to 0 for 0 decimals. And you can add, if it's a currency, you add a C. But again, or not again, for the first time, let me show you the documentation. So the Numeric Text Box has all this information here, including all the different format types that you may want to give the user a hand in putting what they need to put in the Numeric Text Box. So there's a bunch of information here, but also there's the whole API that you can go through and check everything out. Back to the project. Concentrate. So here we can go ahead and get rid of the C because we just want numerals, but we don't want them to have any decimals. And we're going to set a min so that they cannot go under 0, and a max. If you notice a camera change right now, or a camera angle change right now, it's because my camera decided to fall on top of me. Not very nice. I was also making a very corny joke when it happened. So we'll just stick with non-nonsense when I say we're setting a max on how many iterations you can have for your healthy habits that you create. So now we have this set up for our Numeric Text Box to act as we need it to act. So this page will refresh, and now you can see when I try to add a decimal, it gives me a red warning. Another really nice UX thing that comes straight out of the box with the Kendo default theme. So I can't add any decimals. Well, can I add 56? No, it maxes out at 22. Doesn't let me add more than that. And I also can't go all the way past down 0. So we're good on that part. So the next thing that we're going to do with our components is actually add some listeners, some event listeners on them. So, because if you recall, we created a section for there to be a list of the healthy habits that people are adding. In order to gather that information, we're going to add event listeners on both of the inputs and the button so that when they press the button, it adds it to the list. Before we get into those, let's add some information that we're going to use in state. We're going to add it right under nutrition so that we have that big block of the array of habits options at the bottom. First, we're going to add habit ID. We're using this to basically set a key, since we need a key for every list item. Then a habit name that we will put blank. Habit iteration for how many times they want to do it. And then our array of habits. Space. With all those things, we can start making our handler functions now. First, we will handle name change. Passing in the event. And when this happens, we're going to set state to change our habit name. Ooh, that I just realized I forgot to add. I see where I did that. 17, Shift G. Habit name. Come on. All right, back down. Wow. And we'll set it to event.target.value. We're basically going to be doing the same thing, so we'll copy this and change it to handle iteration change, and then change what we need to inside there. Now that we have those, we have to put them onto our inputs. So let's go back down, go to our inputs, and we'll add the value as this .state.habit name. Ooh, inside of it. And we're doing this on change. So anytime there's a change in these, it will tell state, hey, we need to update this to what we just put in here. And that is handle name change. All right, and we do the same with Numeric Text Box. Of course, in order to see that these actually worked, we're going to have to build out our list of habits they're adding. So in order to do that, we are going to go down to our button, since we're already down here. And first, to make this even lovelier, I'm going to add the Kendo UI property of primary and set it to true. And I'll immediately show you that that makes the button pop. So we have that. Now we can go ahead and add an on click and say when somebody clicks this, we want you to handle add habit. And we still need to make that. Let's go ahead and drop this down. So now we'll go back up to the rest of where the functions live and add our handle add habit. Now we're setting more than we did in the last one because we have habits as an array. So what we're going to do is with the first one, we will be adding the first part, right? But we will be concatenating the rest of the ones as we add them. So that's what we're doing here is setting the state of habits and concatenating to that array. So you see that these are all things that we had updated when we changed the inputs. Now with that new information, we're adding it to the actual habit array as a habit object. And one last thing that we want to add on here is another iterator as habit ID, we want it to be unique for each one, so we are saying habit ID +1. And let's put this in the right spot. Now we need to tell the render function how to actually render them next. So if we go back down to our section right here, we're going to add an unordered list of all of these things, and inside of the unordered list we are going to map through that array of habits and display a list component for each of those. And inside of the list component we're actually going to take the iteration and take the number that the iteration has and make an array with the amount of objects in the array for that number that we have set for iterations to make a input that is a radio button. So however many iterations they chose, they'll have a radio button to put it. So first we call the UL, and inside of there we start our JavaScript for inside of our JSX. State.habits.map, and for each habit in there, setting the unique key of habit ID. And if you notice, we have the square brackets, you have multi-lines or multi-things returned. And this is the area for all of the radio button inputs. Looks like I forgot a parenthesis on line 56. So now we should see our list be populated with the information that the user puts in to our inputs. Let's take a look. Nice. So we have what the thing is that they want to do and how many times they want to do it, so then they can check them off. Let's go ahead and add one more thing to make sure that we get in some good mental workouts too, and add 6 hours of coding. And there you go. We have that all in as well. Now the next thing that we're going to do is work on making our grid not only look a little bit better, but also add some functionality by making or giving it the ability to filter. So I want to show you the documentation for the grid because there is so much that you can do with the grid. So if you take a look here, you can see that there's the basic overview, but you can also go to all of these different options for using the grid. And there is, of course, an API for the grid as well that you can go through and check everything out to get the full potential out of the grid. But today, we will just be doing the filtering, and since we have this never-ending grid, we're going to set the height on this first. You do these things by adding different properties to the grid, and I want to show you the height first because it is very simple and it's pretty much how you do most of the things for the grid. So let's go ahead and go down to where our grid component lives, and right after data here we can drop the closing thing down and just say style max height. Set it to 500 pixels for now. We save that, and now we no longer have the crazy long grid. We have it put together in a smaller, more manageable place that we can then scroll through that. Now we'll be adding the filtering for our grid. If you recall, in video 2, we also got a data query module, and inside of theirs we're going to be using filter by. So first thing we need to do is import that and then set up an initial filter in the beginning. So right above state, we're going to go ahead and make a const for our initial filter. everything that we're setting in the filter now is actually something that the user will have control over when they set their own filters in the web app. So description is that first field that we set, the first column that is describing what the food is. So we see it as food, but in the data it is description. And we're going to say that we want it to be contains, which there are different options that you'll see in the grid for filter later. And to start us out, we're going to make the value of the filter set to apple. Again, this is just the initial filter that will be in place when we first render the grid. Next, we're going to head inside the state, and we're going to change the data that gets fed to the grid because we want to make sure that we're sending the grid the data that is filtered the correct way. And we're going to do that with a function called getNutrition. And if you're like, Tara, where is this getNutrition function? You're very observant. We have not made it yet, but we will be making that very soon. So we want to pass it initial filter so it knows how to filter the data initially. It's a tough one. And then we will also say that filter equals initial filter. Spelling is the hardest part about coding, sometimes. Okay, so now we need to make that getNutrition function. So let's go down to all the rest of our functions, and we'll go ahead and just put it in order. So we'll put it after handle add habit getNutrition, and we're going to pass it the filter that we have. And then we're just going to return our nutrition using the filter by function that we brought in from the data query module. Hand it nutrition and our filter. And that is it. But again, I have to spell nutrition correctly, which means that I didn't spell it right up top. Aha. So now that we have that all put in there correctly, we have to actually go down to our grid and add these properties to our grid component. So if we go down here where we had the style entered, we will go there, bring this down, and it's just 3 different things that we need to add here. We need to add letting them know that it is filterable and set that as true. Also add the actual filter, which we know now that we set to this .state.filter. And last but not least, we have our filter change, which gets this .filter change. We also want to make sure that every time that the filter is changed, we have a function that can handle the filter change. And this will get an event, and that event comes from the grid saying that there has been a filter change, where we, of course, this .setState, and we'll set data to be this .getNutrition, and pass it event.filter. Next, we'll set filter to this new event.filter. Okay, so if we take a look at our application, we now have a grid that has the filter functionality. So if we change this because we want to see orange, now we see everything with orange. Lucky us. So we have our application with our grid that is, we're able to filter the data that we are seeing inside of the grid, and we have a section where the user can pick different iterations of healthy habits they want to do and tick them off. And I think that's a good place to wrap up this video. Remember that the repo, along with all the other videos, are listed down below. And you can check that out along with some other resources to help you create this application. And there are more videos to come. Yes, there is more. We will talk about the different Kendo UI React wrappers for even more components that you can use inside of these React applications. And we'll walk through other things, bonus material on the last video. So I hope you check those out. Hope to see you there. Remember, if you have any questions, you can reach out to us at Kendo UI and me personally at TZManix. Thank you very much for coding with me, and I hope to see you soon.